So we discussed the fact that CSU has an opportunity to help with economic development in the area, especially regarding jobs. You know, you've seen all the new buildings and things like that, and so we have an opportunity to help.
First of all, we want to thank the other two tables because you've kind of pointed out the challenges that we were discussing in terms of the shift from profit to nonprofit. How does that shift help to create employment, help to create jobs? And I think both of these tables have kind of addressed that, the rec center, things like that, which then brings us back to the university internally, creating incentives for faculty, and particularly faculties in the humanities. How can we get the humanities to be seen as contributing to employment? They seem to be not mutually inclusive, when in fact they are. But how do we change the mindset within the institution, within the disciplines themselves, that the humanities then can contribute to employment as we move to a profitable nonprofit status?
Good. Yeah, this is sort of this interesting transition from, we had these conversations about what is the role of faculty and the role of students and kind of internal, and this is sort of steps out and says, well, this institution holistically and its array of assets, how do they align at having the kind of impact and transformation we're talking about? So it really is the anchor institutional role is an interesting way to come at it. So I don't know, David, from what you've heard, if any feedback, and if so, you might share it, and if not, or when you're done, we'll.
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly and then take some questions. Thank you for that. I feel like I'm teaching a class now, and then you've all been asked to tell me what you've learned. And I really enjoyed that. That was great, because all of your comments were really about the opportunity frame of it. And we know there are lots of challenges, tons and tons and tons of challenges to doing this. But I think if we look at it from an opportunity frame, we're much better positioned to address the challenges. So I really appreciated all of these responses. So I'll just take some questions. Yes, sir.
Some examples about how institutions have seen, you talked about the mutual benefit to both sides, and I think oftentimes universities have seen it like they're doing the right thing or a good thing by doing a project, but don't necessarily benefit from those, or the students benefit, which is important, but the institution itself doesn't benefit. So are there some institutional benefits that you could point to?
Yeah, I was, earlier we were talking about Duke University, because I think that some of the institutional benefit conversation and community benefit conversation, creating the mutual benefit, is partly to do with how you approach the process. Because at Duke University, when they created their Duke-Durham Neighborhood Partnership, which is actually called something else now, but I just don't remember the new name. When they created it, they identified 12 different neighborhoods around Durham where they wanted to engage locally. And they established ongoing exchange and dialogue in those neighborhoods between residents and stakeholders at the college and university to really identify what are their sort of shared interests and what are their priorities. And so that ended up driving what they ultimately ended up doing. And now one of the great examples, which you mentioned when we were talking yesterday, is Tulane University, which revamped its curriculum in the face of Katrina to then focus primarily on civic engagement. They increased the number of service learning classes that they offer tremendously, and basically reshaped how they pitched the university, because prior to Katrina, students were coming there from all over the country and they wanted to sort of be in New Orleans and be at a great university, and then Katrina came and changed the entire model. So they went the other direction. Instead of saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? They looked at the challenge left in the community as an opportunity, and basically sold the idea that students could come to Tulane University to be a part of an experience of rebuilding New Orleans. And they integrated that throughout their classes. And so now their enrollment is up and the number of applications is at its highest level in its history, doubled from what it used to be. And University of Pennsylvania has some similar kinds of stories because their local engagement really did shape a little bit of their institutional identity and really helped shape their popularity as an institution, which also encouraged a number of people to apply. So, and then, you know, with you, I know your table talked about Boston University. I mean, again, this notion of place. When a place is considered to be desirable, and that has lots of different definitions, because you see Tulane turned the notion of desirable on its head and basically said your experience is going to be great because you're going to be helping to solve a challenging situation. But the quality of the place in which you're situated is still so critical in higher education. No matter how much technology is out there, all that's been changing about how people think about knowledge and how it's getting to people, still to this day, place matters that much. And for higher education, it still matters a tremendous amount. And how students are deciding where to go to college is based on the experience that they are imagining for themselves inside of the institution. So I think that is one critical institutional benefit that can come from some of this kind of work. Yes?
Well, we were also talking about incentivizing teacher scholars
Yeah, it's a big
get
issue.
rewarded,
Yeah.
to get rewarded for civic engagement.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's a really big challenge.
It is.
It seems like tenure and promotion is mostly about publishing and then
Yeah.
service within the department and then teaching. So how
Yeah.
on top of that do you influence administrators, I suppose,
Yeah.
to allow there to be civic engagement included into that?
Right. Yeah, it's a tremendous challenge, and some of it is by the institution. It's a greater challenge at some institutions than at others. Some institutions have created a climate where they've been, like a Michigan State University is an example of an institution that has gone to some lengths to actually address this particular issue. Imagining America is an organization, sort of another national network, largely of faculty who are in the humanities, actually. They have actually focused specifically on tenure and review, and they have created essentially a toolkit on how to help navigate these issues inside of your institution. And then I also think when it comes to publishing, you know, to what degree does the engagement that you're involved in as a faculty member become publishable? And so how do you make sure to write on the various forms of engagement that you're a part of? I think that is another way, but this dialogue is going on all over the country, and it is a hard one. And people haven't sort of readily embraced it, but there are a few now resources out there that are really starting to move the conversation. So I think there's some opportunity in that respect.
David, where do you put institutions, since we're talking about Boston a little bit, where do you put Northeastern on this sort of spectrum of engagement, since embedded in their curriculum is this co-op model that puts students directly into the community?
Yeah.
Where does that fit in all of this?
I'm not familiar with the full details of what they've been doing at Northeastern. But I mean, what you're describing there, I mean, it certainly fits and makes sense in terms of an engagement model. I mean, this is an institution that has really sort of placed its stake, as far as I know, on an engaged experience as an institution. I don't know all the details of what they've done, but I know this is an institution that has really, you know, made some effort in this respect. And one that, you know, and that's why I say with the tenure question, it's sort of like it depends on the institution, right? Because you have to ask the question, where are the institutions that have been able to, as I was talking about, been able to integrate into the core mission this notion of civic engagement and being involved. And I think that that is an institution that has done some work on that. And there are lots of institutions where you've got numerous faculty, numerous students who are continuing to do this kind of work, but they don't necessarily have the full institutional support.
How do you do that piece? Because CSU, you had a slide that listed kind of all of the
Yeah.
things that an engaged anchor institution would do. Support the local public school, check. They do economic development locally, check. They revitalize the local housing market, check. They purchase locally, check. Like they're doing all of that.
Yeah.
And yet there's still the sense that it's not fully embedded in the DNA of the institution yet. So how do you go from, yeah, we do all of these things, to we believe, we
Right.
feel, we would never not do all of these things?
Right. I mean, I think that comes on lots of levels. I mean, I think there's a leadership question. I mean, certainly I think the leadership of the institution. I think the Byron-like positions at various colleges and universities have been critical in terms of getting faculty and students sort of coordinating the various activities that you're involved in. I think you absolutely have to integrate this kind of work into curriculum. It can't be considered to be a sort of on the side, interesting, ancillary, charitable. It cannot be on the margins. It has to be in the center. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get it there. I mean, University of Pennsylvania focused on service learning classes. They have more service learning classes than any institution in the country, as far as I know, right now. So getting it into the classes was one critical way that they really began to sort of get it there. Getting it across disciplines and across multiple departments is another way of really getting it there. But getting that buy-in at leadership is important. We are doing some work with George Washington University right now, and part of what we're doing in a strategic planning process with them is looking at the strategic plan for the entire institution and trying to figure out, okay, so within the strategic plan for the entire institution, where are the opportunities for engagement? And chances are the opportunities are there. When you look at the mission of any institution of higher education, was kind of the whole framing of Beyond the Campus, the book that was mentioned earlier, is that if you look at the mission of any institution of higher education, you can find in some way, shape, or form some alignment with the notion of being engaged externally. And so getting people to really understand that on that level, but it helps when you have a president or a provost really pushing it. It helps when you have trustees pushing it. Trustees can really help in some sense because presidents turn over. Faculty are usually there longer than the leadership of the institution. So engaging it in the faculty, embedding it in the faculty is critical, but embedding it in leadership is critical. And trustees are essential because they are the ones who hire the president. And so as the presidents turn over, as they often do in some cases, you want to make sure that the work is sustained. And that's one thing that University of Pennsylvania has done, again, to that model, is that they've now gone through, they're on their third president who's really advocating for this kind of local engagement. And part of the reason why that happened is because the trustees kept the conversation alive from one president to the next. But you also had multiple players around the institution really buying into this. So now more hands are going up. Yes.
Yes, on the graph regarding Marga.
Yes. Yeah, the wheel.
There are 8 sections, and among those 8 sections, 3 are related to evaluation. Research, evaluating progress, and assessing partnership. So, what is the level of evaluation in that whole system of engagement?
The level of evaluation?
Because I see that it seems that it is really very important.
I think it is, yeah. I think it is. I think that a lot of this has to do with defining goals. I mean, and so when 50 different initiatives are going on a campus, and each one has its own agenda in the community. It's all fine and good. I did it myself when I was a faculty member, because I've taught, I've been a faculty member at 2 different universities, and I used to have my students go out into the community, work with different organizations and things of that sort. I was the one who identified the organizations that we should work with and things of that sort. But what was important to me in those classes was that the organizations got something of value. So evaluation in that context, in those discrete contexts, from each different project, partnership, what have you, it was about defining goals up front.